You lock your front door with one small click. Warm air hums through the room. A lamp turns the walls golden. And when something scratches outside, you barely look up from the bright screen in your hand. Glass, steel, concrete, and a deadbolt stand between you and anything with teeth. Now strip all of that away. There's no door, no wall, no porch light, no emergency number. The darkness beyond your sleeping place is not empty. It is moving, breathing, listening. And some of the animals inside it are faster than you, stronger than you, and built to kill without making a sound. So the question is simple. For millions of years, with no claws, no armor, and nowhere truly safe to sleep, how did your ancestors survive the world's deadliest predators at all? Start with the worst news. For a long time, your ancestors were not masters of the food chain. They were food. A young Australopithecus known as the tongue child died in South Africa about 8 million years ago, and damage around the skull helped researchers argue that a large eagle carried the child away at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. Bite marks on the roughly 18 million-year-old, 08-foot, resemble the marks made by crocodiles. Fossils do not preserve the scream, but they preserve what caught you. Your ancestors had no lion's jaws, no leopard's claws, and no hyena's bone-crushing bite. Even a powerful adult was terrifyingly soft compared with the predators sharing the same grasslands, riverbanks, and caves. Here's what nobody tells you. The first great human weapon was probably not a stone. It was another human. Your primate relatives already show why this works. In 1980, Robert Seyfarth, Dorothy Cheney, and Peter Marler played different alarm calls to wild vervet monkeys. Leopard calls sent them into trees, eagle calls made them look upward, and snake calls made them scan the ground. The important part was not noise. It was shared information that changed an entire group's behavior in seconds. Your early ancestors inherited that social world. One pair of eyes could miss movement in the grass, but many pairs could watch different directions. One frightened cry could pull children inward, bring adults together, and turn a silent ambush into a wall of bodies, stones, sticks, and unbearable noise. Think about that for a second. A predator evolved to isolate one victim. Your ancestors learned to refuse isolation. A lone body was fragile. A group was a problem. But numbers only helped when danger was noticed in time. Because the deadliest predators rarely won through strength alone. They won through place. Tall grass hid cats. Muddy banks hid crocodiles. Cave mouths offered shelter, but they also offered hyenas and bears the same shelter. A water source could keep your body alive while placing it exactly where every thirsty killer knew to wait. The obvious answer is that your ancestors became better fighters. The real answer began earlier. They became harder to surprise. At Olorgesailie in Kenya, researchers searching the higher margins of an ancient basin found pieces of a human skull about 900,000 years old. The brow and brain case carried carnivore punctures. Whoever that person was, the safer ground was not safe enough that day. No fossil can preserve a whispered warning or a lookout pointing toward reeds. But the cost of one mistake is written into bones like these, and every group that survived had the chance to remember where the mistakes happened. That memory changed movement. Your ancestors could approach water together, scan from open ground, avoid fresh tracks, listen when birds suddenly went quiet, and choose sleeping places where an attack had fewer directions to come from. These were not glamorous victories. Most left nothing for an archaeologist to find. Here's what does not make sense until you think about it. Intelligence often saves you before the fight begins. The safest predator encounter never happened. Then your ancestors changed the one measurement that mattered most: distance. Against a big cat at arm's length, bare courage is almost useless. A rock, a sharpened branch, or a spear let your body reach beyond its skin, forcing teeth and claws to cross a dangerous gap. At Kathupan 1 in South Africa, Jane Wilkins and her colleagues studied stone points about 500,000 years old. Their impact fractures shaped bases. An experimental comparison showed that these points had likely been attached to shafts as spear tips. Your ancestors were no longer holding only a sharp rock. They were building a weapon from several parts and planning the strike before the danger arrived. Much later, at Schöningen in Germany, wooden spears and throwing sticks were preserved beside the remains of hunted animals. A 2025 redating placed the famous spear horizon at roughly 200,000 years ago and connected it with increasingly cooperative Neanderthal hunting. Wood almost always rots, so what survives there is a rare glimpse of an enormous missing technology. Here's the part nobody talks about. A spear did not need to kill a lion to save you. It only needed to change the lion's calculation. Predators avoid injuries because even a small wound can mean starvation. Later, a line of shouting humans holding sharpened shafts was no longer a collection of slow, clawless meals. It was an animal the predator had never evolved to understand. One creature, made from many bodies. With points reaching out in front, your ancestors did not grow fangs. They built reach, and then the sun went down. Daylight gave your ancestors a chance to see danger coming, but darkness returned the advantage to every hunter with better night vision, quieter feet, and a nose that could find blood beyond the edge of sight. You could not guard every direction when you could not see your own panned fire changed that, although not in the magical way people often imagine. It did not create an invisible force field, and a starving predator could still cross the flames. What fire created was uncertainty for the hunter. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers reported ash from plants and burned bone and sediments about 1 million years old, roughly 30 meters inside the cave, where an outside grass fire could not simply sweep through. The evidence showed that burning happened inside a space occupied by early humans. A flame manufactured a small piece of daytime. Its light exposed movement. Its smoke carried an unfamiliar warning. Its heat kept people close enough to hear one another, while glowing coals could be fed to the night by someone who was already awake. Fire did not remove the predators beyond the circle. It removed their perfect surprise. Imagine sitting inside that orange light. Beyond it, eyes may still reflect from the dark, hyenas may still laugh, and a lion may still pace where you cannot see its body. But now the predator must cross an illuminated border while several humans are standing, shouting, and lifting spears. For the first time, night had an edge, but every defense eventually failed for someone. A fall broke a leg, a bite tore muscle. Age slowed the person who once saw danger first. That created another brutal problem. Predators do not need to defeat the strongest member of a group. They only need the group to abandon its weakest. Your ancestors often did the opposite. At Dmanisi, in the Republic of Georgia, a roughly 1.77 million-year-old skull called D3444 belonged to an individual who had lost nearly every tooth long before death. The fossil cannot tell you exactly who softened food or shared it, but surviving for years in that condition shows that. Weakness did not automatically mean immediate abandonment. At Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, the Neanderthal called Shanidar 1 lived to roughly 35 to 45 years old, despite a crushing head injury, damage around one eye, severe problems with an arm, and other healed injuries. His bones show that he survived the damage, not merely that he received it. Here is the deeper survival trick. Protecting an injured person was not only compassion, it protected knowledge. A slower adult could still remember the waterhole where lions waded, the season when hyenas denned nearby, the shape of a crocodile slide in mud, or the exact branch that made a spear flex instead of snap. You cannot prove which story D3444 or Shanidar 1 ever told, but keeping vulnerable people alive kept human experience inside the group. A claw dies with its owner. A lesson can survive the attack. Eventually, the balance shifted so far that one of the world's great predators became the hunted. At Siegsdorf in Germany, researchers re-examined the skeleton of a cave lion that lived about 48,000 years ago. A puncture in one rib was consistent with a wooden thrusting spear entering the animal's body, and cut marks showed that Neanderthals processed the carcass afterward. The researchers described it as the earliest, direct evidence of humans killing a large predator. That does not mean Neanderthals casually hunted lions every weekend. The Siegsdorf animal was old, and attacking it still required getting close enough for the lion to kill you in a heartbeat. But think about what it changed. Millions of years after raptors, crocodiles, and cats left their signatures on human bones, a member of the human family drove a wooden spear into a cave lion, not because the human body had become stronger, but because the encounter was no longer one body against another. It was eyes, voices, memory, wood, fire, planning, and trust arriving at the same point. Predators came at your ancestors with 5 great advantages: surprise, speed, darkness, natural weapons, and the power to isolate the vulnerable. Your ancestors answered surprise with watchers, speed with smarter roots, darkness with fire, teeth with spears, and isolation with one another. That is the part of human survival worth remembering. Your ancestors did not conquer the night because they became fearless. Fear kept them listening. They did not survive because every fight was won, but because they learned to make fewer fights necessary and to make the unavoidable ones unfair. The human story is often told as the triumph of a giant brain. Yet a brain alone, asleep in the grass, is only food. What saved your ancestors was the ability to place that brain inside a circle of other people, to warn, teach, defend, remember, and stand between danger and someone who could not run. Predators shaped your fear, but your ancestors shaped what fear could do. Tonight, you hear the soft click of your lock. Warm light spills across the floor. The window holds back the dark, and whatever moves outside feels very far away. You sleep safely tonight because, for millions of nights, your ancestors refused to let anyone face the dark alone.